All right, you guys all getting a screen there from me? Got some nods, I think, so sounds good. Thank you all for welcoming me to talk about some updates and things that are quite different now than when I was supposed to do this presentation the first time way back last March. And I've pretty much been home, like a lot of folks have mentioned, working from home quite a bit. That's kind of been my life for the past almost year now. So it's a whole different world from the typical of Pennsylvania state parks. So basically, this is the typical thing you see in Pennsylvania state parks during the summer, a big crowded beach full of people. That was the state park summer plans, but 2020 ended up looking a little bit more like this picture that you see over on the side here, with people kind of spread out and wearing masks and things like that. But it did not stop folks from coming to use our resources. Beaches were still packed full of people, hopefully distancing as much as humanly possible and wearing masks as much as humanly possible when not in the water. But it was definitely not the 2020 that any of us had anticipated, as I'm sure you are all aware. COVID-19 just really drove all sorts of outdoor recreation, as I'm sure each of you saw on your own travels throughout this summer. This is a picture of early spring on the Schuylkill River Trail. And as you can see there, again, not a lot of mask wearing picked up quite yet, but I think it came along a little bit later when it does happen out of doors, which, as again, I'm sure most of you have seen in your travels, isn't always. But yeah, people have really turned to the outdoors to get a look at, to kind of get away from COVID and everything involved with this pandemic that we're experiencing. And we think it's a good thing. It's just been really heartening to see that that people do turn to the out of doors in times of need for getting some sort of solace or whatever it is that everyone enjoys, seeing what's going on in nature and getting out of the house whenever possible in a safe way. So you can see here, this is just the parks on the eastern side of Pennsylvania, the parks that I have in my region, and Eastern Pennsylvania State Parks, or Pennsylvania State Parks Region 4, is basically Lancaster, Reading area from the top of the state to the bottom of the state. So it's pretty much all of Eastern Pennsylvania, 30 some state parks, depending on how you group them with complexes and things. And I'm mostly in park education and have 20 some park educators who work not necessarily under me, but alongside me to do education in our parks. So you can see some of the standouts here. French Creek 2019 had just over about 1.3 million people, something like that, and all the way up to close to 2 million people in 2020 for 41.6% increase. Hickory Run, while a little bit lower, had one of our biggest percentage increases, going from, somewhere in the 800,000 range all the way up to over 1.3 million people. And then Nakamixon bringing in our biggest attendance this year of over 2 million people, and that's a 62% increase from their 2019 numbers. So you can see every single park in our whole region and every complex had 10, 20, 30, 40% increase in attendance this year. So again, really great, very heartening, good to see. At the same time, it does create some stress on the resource. And again, I'm sure you've seen that on trails and out and about in nature as you travel around. So this is state parks statewide. 2019, 37 million people visited us. 2020, 46 million people visited us. So that's a difference of almost 11 million people And you can see that pretty much half of that was just on the eastern side of the state. So pretty incredible how loved we are in eastern Pennsylvania. And but again, with staffing shortages and all sorts of things like that, you can definitely see the stresses on the resource at different points in time. So this is from some information from Pennsylvania State Harrisburg's Lion poll in fall of 2020. They polled a little over 1,000 people, might have been 1,200, something like that. And the folks that answered that they went out to parks during the pandemic, 4 out of 5 of those people said that they thought that the time spent outdoors was essential to their physical and mental health and well-being. And would guess that's a statement the group here would agree with as well. And then 75% of the people who are saying that they go to parks think that the outdoor recreation facilities really should be a top priority for funding from state and local governments. So really, folks are out there, they love the resource, and they think that we need to support it on the state level. And we definitely do our job in state parks to do the boots on the ground side of that. And we're hopeful that the legislature and the government will really pay attention and see that this is an essential resource for people and that it needs to be funded all the way. But it is a bad thing as well. High visitation impacts have really caused a lot of stress on the resource in a lot of ways. This is a picture from Hickory Run after a very busy weekend, and you can see that folks come in and they do their enjoyment of the out of doors, but they don't always pack in, pack out. They don't always follow those great leave no trace principles that we try to teach about. So we end up having to spend the next several days just trying to catch up from a weekend. And if you see a lot of the comments out there, every day was like a weekend throughout summer of 2020. So it really was pretty relentless. And a little bit less obvious in this picture here, but I'm sure some of you folks who are great trails volunteers out there will be able to see some of the impacts in this picture, such as the soil compaction all around the base of this tree that's up against this rock face here, and the soil kind of running off down the sides on the downslope. Just tons and tons and tons of feet and tons and tons and tons of erosion, all sorts of things like that. This is again at Hickory Run State Park on the Hawk Falls Trail. And if you walk this trail now, you see spiderweb trails going all over the place. And it's something that is going to take some time and energy to rehab, and that's when everything slows up enough to let us do any rehab. Some parks have had to close areas due to these situations, but again, the love is a good thing, and being there for people is why we're in this, why we create these resources, so and manage these resources. So it is really good to see. While visitation is way up, if I threw our program numbers up on here, which I purposefully didn't do, you'd see that's not as pretty a picture. And I'm sure everybody can understand why that is, with the only having a small number of people in every program, and not having vast stretches of the year when we couldn't really do anything at all. So, park programming was down, but we did do a lot of innovative stuff in the virtual forum, which I'll talk a little bit more about. Things like self-guided opportunities, storybook trails where a children's book is placed out throughout the length of a trail, and people can go and take their kids and read a book as they travel along. Those were very popular. Things like letterboxing and geocaching, and other using QR codes to get people into the looking at park maps on their phones were all very successful. But then, we got to the point where everybody was supposed to do virtual programming, and nobody in parks had webcams, and nobody had microphones, because we didn't do that sort of thing. So, and we still, even to this day, are still trying to order that sort of stuff, and having struggles getting it to our educators. So it's been also a bit of a big borrow and steal kind of situation to get people to be able to do virtual programming. Trail use in and out of state parks has been record setting all year long as well. Camping in Pennsylvania state parks was up 42%. State forest camping was up 29% over 2019. But if you look at a 10-year average, it was almost 100% increase of people out there camping on forest lands. So looking at this, May, lots and lots of trail use early on in the pandemic. Things slowed down a little bit later on, but you can still see consistently much higher than 2018 and 2019 across the board throughout Pennsylvania. And some of this information's from a PEC, Pennsylvania Environment Council report that they put together that has all sorts of great details on how COVID impacted trail usage. I can't get to the chat right now because I'm screen sharing, but I can go back through and dig this link up at the end if anybody wants to get that. So trails all over the place were heavily used, and both we saw damage, but we also saw increased attention and people more concerned with their local trails, and also anecdotal, I don't have any facts and figures on this, but volunteerism seems to have been increasing as well when possible. Some of that is offset by having difficulty in getting out there due to COVID restrictions, but where parks were able to continue running smaller socially distanced programs, they saw really, really good turnout, and the same people showing up again and again and again over time. So it's good to know. Seeing 100 and 200% increases depending on the time of the year and trail usage. Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission saw 100% increases on some of their trails. And one example is the DNL or Delaware Canal State Park Trail at Washington Crossing was up 118% for most of the season. And the new 202 Parkway Trail in Montgomery and Bucks County was up almost 140% in its boots on the ground. So before all this happened, this is kind of where my presentation would have started had I been presenting to you back in March. The real big new update for our region in 2020 was the opening of the Hickory Run new office and visitor center in Carbon County. Really, really beautiful facility. And the part of it that I'm going to talk to you most about is what I had the most involvement with, and that's the exhibits and the educational side of things. But this is just the outer structure of the new park office. If you haven't been up there to take a look, you should get up there to, or just wait until they're able to open the exhibit hall again, because as I mentioned, I think that's the shining gem. I was intimately involved in the creation of the exhibits, and the process went on from the beginning of my move into this position in 2017. So it took us quite a few years to create the exhibits, and we think they turned out phenomenally. So the exhibit hall in the building takes up basically most of this whole wing that you kind of see right here. Basically, if you look at the upper part of the building, all those kind of skylight windows look down into the exhibit hall. So it does take up a very large part of the footprint of the building. If you look at it from the skyward view, here are those windows I was talking about, the skylight windows. This is a big, on the upper side of it is a window kind of looking out over the forest. And then the different exhibit areas were basically created to mirror some of the most iconic parts of the park. We have the Boulder Field area in the lower right-hand corner. We have the Hawk Falls area just above that on your screen. In the center is the Shades of Death, which is one of the most well-known and loved hiking trails in Hickory Run. We have the Stewardship area, which kind of mirrors a couple of walls and talks about the best uses of the property. We have a whole section on the Lehigh Gorge, which is part of the Hickory Run complex, and talks about the canal and the early Industrial Revolution history of the park area. And then a section about Hickory Run itself and the how it became a park and what went into basically turning a devastated area of logged land into one of our most iconic Eastern Pennsylvania state parks. So this is what you'd see if you stood by that big window overlooking the forest and looked back through the hall. So it's really vast. The lock wall that you see over on the right-hand side of your screen is probably about 20 feet tall, I would guess. So it's a really, really expansive exhibit, and you can really get lost in it for a couple of hours, I think, on first visit. It's beautifully sculptured. We worked with a company called 106 Group out of Minneapolis, and their partner, Blue Rhino Studios, and the Rhino did all the sculptural elements, and 106 Group did all of the planning and the content with us as kind of driving the development of the content. And you can see they really went above and beyond to create the texture and feel of Hickory Run within this exhibit hall. One thing that really excites me about that is there's a lot of places in the park that if anybody has any mobility issues or things like that, you just really can't get out and see some of these spots. So bringing bits and pieces of them into the building so that all visitors can get to experience it was an exciting facet for us. And this is some of the smaller, finer detail that you can see as you look around, sculptured mushrooms and fungus on the logs, handmade moss and rocks and grasses and needles and ferns and all sorts of things, very lovingly built. I'm going to try to run a little video here to just show you what it looked like from the install perspective. Hopefully everybody's on a good enough internet connection that this will come through, but it's only a minute or two long, so just bear with me if you don't see the whole thing. And this is kind of the central tree that was on the Shades of Death exhibit. And so what you're going to see is kind of a couple of different perspectives as they finish it up and then lever it into position with some of these big lifts. So first of all, you got to make the trunk fit to the ceiling. And then you lift it up. And at this point, these gentlemen figured out that they can't drive the lift once it's extended. So they had to get another lift in there to switch the tree onto a different lift.
Ian, it's Susan. We have a question. Are the
Sure, go ahead.
Are the materials in the exhibits any of them natural substances, or are they all sculpted?
It's mostly all sculpted. There are some collections like some pine needles and things that they had to collect up around the site, and then sanitize so that no living things were left in them, and then kind of coat them with a coating so that they could be there without decaying or spreading buggies around the exhibits. So then at this point in this tree process, they decided they just needed to shove it into place. So they get it as close as they can. jack it up, lower it down, and then just kind of use muscle power to get it the rest of the way. So it was really neat for me to have been through all the planning process and then get to see these things kind of come to life. It's really one of my favorite parts of my job, at least so far. And then they get it all lined up with the base, and then they have to go back through and do finishing touches of paint and all sorts of things like that. And you can see that tree standing up on the right-hand side there. So pretty incredible what goes into a process like this. So now a real quick peek through these different exhibit areas. This is the one focusing on the Boulder field. It's got an interactive exhibit in the middle that kind of shows some of the geologic processes, photos on the right-hand side. And hard to notice, and I didn't get a good zoom in on this, but if you see on the right-hand side on a rock, there's a little glowing, almost looks like a glass ball. There are videos set in some of these rocks in different places, and you peek in, you kind of lean into this little glass area, and you get a drone footage of flyover of the Boulder field, which if anybody in the group hasn't been up to Boulder field, which I'm sure you all have, but if you haven't, put it on your must-go list, because it's an outstanding resource in our region. So one of my favorite areas of this whole exhibit was the stewardship side of things, trying to convey a little bit of a message of care for what you see out there around you. And these were done in the style of the kind of iconic NPS posters of the 40s and 50s. And kind of focus in on some of the resources at Hickory Run, such as Boulder Field. And it was kind of a coup for us when we were all talking, trying to figure out what we were going to have on the title of this, like don't paint on the rocks or whatever, but respect rocks kind of came out of the group and just fit really well. And each one of these posters has kind of a museum label next to it that gives people a little bit of a thought process on why they should pay attention to that stewardship area. These are the rest of them. I really like the Keep Wildlife Wild picture, and the fat raccoon eating a buffet on the picnic table. Clean water, keeping our streams clean. That's Hawk Falls in the picture there. Nature is home, kind of mentioning that it's a home for people and it's a home for the creatures that live there, so we should respect it. And then when you go out on these great adventures, you should be prepared, take water, take maps, things like that. It was very important to the team to get some of those messages across to the visitors. This is the Shades of Death area of the exhibit. It again shows a little bit of a trail and kind of focuses on death and decomposition, since that worked well with the name of the trail. The central piece of this exhibit is a log that you can slide a magnifying glass back and forth on, and the team, there's a few sculpted elements in there, and they can also put little individual things into those boxes so that people can get an up-close look at some little bit of nature in the building. Hawk Falls, again, is a very famous spot at Hickory Run, and a gorgeous trail to hike on. So this consists of a little interactive diorama that shows the inside of a stream, a little bit of a manipulative game that you can match up different fly tying fly lures with the macroinvertebrates that they're supposed to look like. And also try to match baby macros, what you find in the stream, to the adult bugs. And then on the left-hand side, you see a large monitor there. That's a picture of, or a video of Hawk Falls that fades throughout 4 seasons. So it'll show you summer and then fade into autumn and fade into winter and fade it back into spring again. So that just plays all day long. It's really neat. And the ambient sounds were another neat part of this. You can't experience that here, but little speakers in all these exhibits kind of play noises from the forest and the surrounding area to really give it the feel of being outdoors. And then our main history section for the Lehigh Gorge shows some of the purpose of the canal and how it operated. There's a rock stacking activity that kids or anyone can try to see how a big dry stone laid wall like you would see out on the Lehigh Gorge Trail or the Delaware Canal Trail would have been built. And you have this impressive rig up above you with a foam rock that kind of hangs out in space as you're walking around the exhibit. So pretty neat stuff. All right, so I'm going to pause a moment here for a quick drink of water. There wasn't anything else that you wanted to, anybody wanted to know about the exhibits before we move on, was there, Susan? I'll take the silence as a no.
I don't have any questions. Sorry.
Sounds good. No worries.
But a lot of compliments, Ian.
Excellent. Well, I hope everyone gets to get up there and see it. There was a very brief open window between, I would say, October. We said we could open it up, and then it got all closed down again in December when numbers started creeping up. So really not a whole lot of people have gotten to experience this to its fullest yet.
And we just had that question come up, when will it open? And I guess the question.
The when is like everything else, as I'm sure everybody's aware, it's a bit of a work in progress. Right now, it's basically no programming, no exhibit spaces kind of stuff. That's through March 31st. And then every day the executive team is working together to talk about what's next, and everybody's keeping an eye on all the numbers and everything else. So fingers crossed this spring. But again, my email's at the end. Feel free to email me for updates at any point in time. So land, we did manage to acquire some land in 2019 and 2020. The Highlands Act provided some funding for some pieces of land that got acquired within state parks. 57 acres got added into Marsh Creek, 60 acres got added to Nolde Forest, and 15 acres at Nakamixon State Park. And that was 2 properties in 2020. And then we had a very big acquisition that added to a section of White Clay Creek. This was a 978 acre parcel of the Strawbridge property, and that gets added into a piece that we already had, which we're calling the Big Elk Creek section of the park. So that 978 brings that total up to close to 1,700 acres in the Big Elk section. And we're working on a project with National Park Service down there right now to plan for how to do very minimal low density development on those parcels so that there can be some trail stuff. Right now it's really just land with no amenities or no nothing pretty much besides what was on it when we acquired it. So if anyone is down in that far southeastern corner of Pennsylvania, that is an option for folks to join in and be part of that. Might be something that AMC wants to look at partnering on that planning partnership down there. And go ahead.
Where are the properties that were added in Nakamixon?
It was 2 very small neighboring landowner properties. I want to say that they're kind of adjacent to where the Sterner Mill area is and where the dam was taken out recently. Kind of up in the if I'm looking at the map, it's the upper left-hand corner, but I don't know exactly which. I would say northwest, but I can't vouch for that 100%. If anybody wants to, again, email me about that, I can get you many more specifics on that. So that white clay section is really amazing because it kind of joins into a 5,300 acre parcel, a management area that is right across the Pennsylvania border. If anyone hasn't been to white clay, it's really neat because Delaware, Maryland, and Pennsylvania all come together right there. So you've got all the states adjoining and overlapping public lands that cross state boundaries. 2.1 miles of the Mason-Dixon line are part of that section. When you look at that whole mid-Atlantic block down there, it's about an 8,000 acre contiguous block of open space that we've got bits of, Delaware's got bits of, Maryland's got bits of, but a really great resource for what's a densely populated area of our country and our state. So yeah, if anybody wants to know more about being involved in the comprehensive stakeholder input, just give me a holler. Another very recent and very exciting acquisition to Delaware Canal State Park was the David Library of the American Revolution property, 136 acres, kind of abutting Washington Crossing Historic Park, and adding to a good area of the canal right there with some infrastructure for park office, which has been a challenge for many years. If anyone's ever been to the park office in Upper Black Eddy, it's toenailed into a little tiny lock tender's house from the 1800s. And this property will really allow the canal to expand. It'll be our southern maintenance area and provide for some main office and program space. The Upper Black Eddy office will stay, but it won't be as central to the operations quite so much anymore. Some of the main management will take place down closer to the crossing. The park and DCNR are very excited about the American Revolution connections with this property and Washington Crossing, which is our newest park acquisition. Not a few years ago now, but still the newest park to have been added to Pennsylvania state parks. If you think all the way back to the beginning of Pennsylvania state parks, Valley Forge and some of those properties were our very first until they went to NPS. So this kind of is bringing us back to our revolutionary heritage. And a very big project that's just about to get underway is at Washington Crossing Historic Park, just down the road from that new acquisition. An $8.7 million capital project is about to break ground as soon as possible, and that will be for rehab of 11 historic homes and structures in and around Washington Crossing Park. Hopefully will be completed by spring 2022. And as part of this, since that is going to put an impact on the central portion of Washington Crossing, we're working on implementing our plan to realign the tour route from the office and visitor center down closer to the river, and kind of reorienting people's eyes, since if you're familiar with the property there, it's kind of a little bit confusing for visitors, even though we're talking about Washington crossing the Delaware. All the buildings that are throughout the park there were much later, more in the 1800s rather than the 1700s. So by orienting a trail down towards the Delaware River, it'll provide a much clearer storyline to talk about Washington's moment of decision in 1776, and why that was such a pivotal moment for the country. And then the tour will come back through the Taylorsville area to talk about what came after Washington's crossing of the Delaware. And then a small, go ahead.
Before we leave Washington Crossing,
Sure.
The question is the David Library open, and who runs it?
So the David Library has been privately owned and run for many years. They did have the one of the largest collections of Revolutionary War sort of primary source materials in the United States. They have moved to join up with the American Revolution Museum. If anybody's got the title of that in Philadelphia off the top of their head, throw it in there. So the David Library has moved to join up with some of the other leaders in this space and kind of vacated the former David Library property. I'm not sure what the status is for visitation in the kind of transitional period before the canal kind of takes it over. You could call Delaware Canal State Parks office and they'd be able to fill you in on whether folks can see it now or whether it's going to wait a little bit until the canal gets residency. And so Nolde Forest Environmental Education Center in Reading, one of our furthest west parks and furthest southwest areas in Region 4. McConnell Hall, which you can just kind of make out in this left-hand side of this picture here, is a squat 1970s addition to the property. The Nolde Mansion is a beautiful structure. If you haven't seen that before, and I didn't think to throw that one in here, but it's definitely worth visiting to check out the mansion. And the park itself is a gem, right kind of hidden in close to downtown Reading. But in any case, this hall, which is the main education building for the site, is badly in need of some assistance, and it's going to be getting new bathrooms and a kind of a realignment of the teaching space. And then down the road, that will be leading into an education interpretive project that we'll create in that space, which will probably be our next large interpretive project in our region. And getting on into the planning side of things, as was mentioned, we are wrapping up final stages on the Penn's Parks for All planning process. It started in 2017 and the final plan should be rolling out this spring. Lots of initial results made sense to us that we did extensive surveys in the process of building this plan that will carry us on for the next 20 years or more. Everybody agrees that we should continue to emphasize healthful outdoor recreation. People want quiet, natural, and wild experiences, which is a really good finding for us, because there's always a back and forth between should we develop into splash and high adventure parks, that kind of stuff. Overwhelmingly, people said no, they want the kind of state park experience that they're used to, a natural wild experience. People said we should be limiting activities when there's overuse of resources, and they do want more adventure, not necessarily zip lines, but rock climbing and things that water rafting, stuff that can happen in our parks naturally. And people were meh, they weren't so into big vacation packages. They kind of like the idea of more splash playgrounds rather than pools. People weren't as keen, or at least the people that responded to us weren't as keen on motorized trails. They kind of thought that huge events weren't really what state parks should be doing either, and really resort style development came back as not of interest to the citizens of Pennsylvania. So basically what we're taking out of that is that we need to work on our trails, sustainability and accessibility, better connecting the park facilities and programming to other recreation resources in the region, having more water-based recreation, whether that's splash pools or creating more natural places that mimic, kind of like pools that mimic nature, rather than just letting everybody into the creek, which in some places can be detrimental to the resource. And with overnight accommodations, people really like the stuff that isn't just the RV campground. They want more electric only campsites, not necessarily sewage hookup, stuff like that. They want more remote non-electric and walk-in sites. They want boat-in opportunities for waterfront camping, and looking at new overnight types of facilities like camping cottages that are like tree houses and things like that that you're seeing at parks and around the country. Ohio, I know, is doing quite a lot of that right now. And we also have a brand new hot off the presses SCORP, or Statewide Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan. This one is called Recreation for All, and it really does talk a lot about accessibility and diverse representation, and making sure that everybody feels welcome in our parks, and that they're not just for the people who are seen in them most often right now. So just some of the basic stuff is that we should be concentrating on these 5 areas of health and wellness, making recreation accessible to everyone, having sustainability at the core of everything we do. Funding and economic development are essential, and that's for our state parks and local parks as well. And we really think that, or the people of Pennsylvania think that Pennsylvania should be marketed as an outdoor recreation destination, which we're already seeing. And of course, our COVID visitation definitely shows us that as well. And definitely having technology integrated in all of this so that people can find their way and make sure that we're meeting their needs in those spectrums. So just a couple of key findings I pulled out of the report. 52% of Pennsylvanians say they can safely walk to a park. So that's good, but that's only 52%. So that's 48% who would say that they probably can't safely walk to a park. So it might be somewhere we could do a little better statewide. Whoops. So 70, sorry, my screen is not cooperating here with me for the moment. 79% of the people who are outdoor enthusiasts said that community and regional trail systems were a highest priority for investment for them over the next 5 years. 65% of Pennsylvanians think that parks and recreation and open space, it should be thought of as an essential part of the healthcare system. 70% of Pennsylvanians agree that outdoor recreation will attract new residents, businesses and communities, businesses to communities. And just one thing that kind of came out of this plan and hit home to me because it happened in state parks is the Young Lungs at Play program, where basically tobacco-free parks within all of state parks, all playground areas are now smoke and vape free zones, so that we can let our young folks breathe healthfully while they're out there on the playground. And sunscreen dispensers is also a pilot program that we're working on in a lot of our state parks. So a last call for volunteering in your state parks. We have a statewide DCNR conservation volunteer program. The address is here, and I can throw that up in the chat again at the end if you guys remind me, or if you can, someone else could do that for me as well. You can also, so if you went to this site, you can sign up to be a volunteer pretty much anywhere within the state, say which parks you like or are near you, and they can find you when they're doing programs. But the best route is always, if you're really interested, to make that personal touch with the park managers or the educator staff at the parks, because they're really the people who have the lifeline on what is needed and what opportunities there are. And when people are really interested, there's often opportunities to create opportunities, especially for those folks, which is harder to do through a wider system like the volunteer program. And I am the coordinator of volunteers for the whole Eastern Pennsylvania region. So if you need some help being directed to who to talk to, or where the best opportunities for you might be, please reach out, and I'd be happy to discuss. I did put my office phone number there. That's hit or miss these days. But if you call that, it'll give you my cell phone number and you can contact me that way as well. And that's my updates for you tonight.
Okay, if anyone has any questions for Ian and would like to, if you haven't already had it, if you're not good at putting them into chat, if you'd like to unmute and ask a question, please go ahead and do that.
I'll leave the slides up just for a minute in case we need to refer to anything, but holler out. Or
Hey, John here. I'm
Hey,
curious
John.
how you estimate the attendance and visitors at the various parks.
It's done, what would I say? Every park does their own attendance numbers and reports their own attendance numbers. For many parks, that's done primarily through traffic counters. And then there's a kind of an intricate weighting system that goes on behind the scenes, formulas that calculate based on a variety of different things that might be missed cars or situations for big events, things like that might not hit everybody, and all sorts of rigmarole. So I can't get too granular on that, but traffic counters and vehicles do play a big part of it.
Okay, because when we go to various parks, there just doesn't appear to be any type of measurement system to record a person's coming or going.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're 100% now, but it's pretty close to 100%. And basically what you'd be looking for is kind of like a squarish box mounted on a post, usually at the entrance to a parking lot, or even just as you're driving into the park itself, kind of through the first entry gate. And that just ticks off every single car. And then they do the multiplier, assuming that there's 2.3 people per car or whatever it is, and that's mostly where it goes. And then rangers and others have various other ways that they physically count people and add that into the tally when appropriate.
Okay, thanks.
Ian, we have a question in the chat. How many people do you think could go through the New Hickory Run Visitor Center at once? And I'm assuming this means once we're out of COVID restrictions.
I think if you had more than 30 or 40 people in there at a time, you would probably have a little lack of elbow room. I would say you can probably safely, well, with no distancing requirements, you'd probably have 4 or 5 people per exhibit area, I'd imagine, comfortably. Many more than that would get crowded. But it is a big 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 foot space. So you can spread out, but again, if you want to get up and close with the interactives and things like that, I would probably try to do groups of 10, 12, 15 at a time. So if you were trying to stick together.
And one more question, are pets, dogs, cats, and it was specified turtles allowed in state parks? And if so, or if not, why?
Many they are allowed in all state parks. There are restrictions in some campgrounds and camping areas to be pet area or not pet area. We have leash restrictions for all of our state parks, so pets do need to be on a leash and controlled at all times. So there's no dog parks that I'm familiar with, free run areas. It's all keep your pet constrained. Turtles too. You don't want your turtle going feral into the pond. And we're in the SCORP and in the plan, Penn's Parks for All plan, increased pet amenities in camping is high on the list as well. So I think that any park you're aware of that might not have the pet facilities you want, it's likely that they will be looking into that if they have camping areas.
Ian, as a fan of Jacobsburg State Park, has there been any thought given to keeping the visitor center open on weekends, which are the busiest times? And if
Yeah, I think that in normal times, that's definitely something that they plan to do on a more regular basis. There have been some staff transitions over the past couple of years. We have a new full-time education employee. The posting for that is being advertised right now for Pennsylvania employees. It's an internal posting right now. Then once they have that full complement of educators, the front desk staff, and the park manager, they will do that. They had made the choice not to have their exhibitry open during COVID, but once we're beyond restrictions in that regard, I think you can definitely plan to have more access to that building in non-program times, especially during the weekend.
And can I just give a plug for people from this area? If they have snowshoes available there from 8:30 to 2 on weekdays, and you can borrow them for free. They're nice MSR snowshoes. And so if you want to try snowshoeing, close to home opportunity to do that.
I was very impressed. I was was visiting there the other day, and Lauren, the educator, showed me her speaker out the window scenario for coaching people to safely install and put on the snowshoes while properly social distancing. It was kind of a cool way to almost like a drive-in snowshoe rental factory.
Do we have any more questions coming in, either in chat or in person?
Well, while I got a second here and we're waiting, I'm going to throw a few things into the chat. I'm going to have to probably stop my screen share to do that. I can always bring it back up if we need to look at anything, but yeah, so COVID has been an adventure.
Ian, thank you very much. Really appreciated, well, as we said at the beginning, how the parks have been used in so heavily in this last year, but then seeing all the other wonderful things that are happening there. So we thank you very much for giving us, and yay, we're certainly did not have this when we had thought we would, but thank you, thank you.
You are absolutely very welcome, and I'm glad that we still have good things to report even in these trying times.
So Phil, did you have something you wanted to tell them about what's coming up next?
Yes, in March, fortunately, February and March have the same date. So March 17th, we will be back here for a virtual meeting, and it is titled Conversation on an Astronomical Scale. Subtitles, Why Black Skies Matter. And Doug and you're going to have to help me with his last name here.
Doug Arian.
Arian will be giving us a presentation on the universe. So looking very forward to that. That will be in March. And as of right now, even looking further ahead, April, we will be going to the Delaware Canal with Susan Taylor. So we do have some good things coming up here, and yay, it's quite good. Certainly not as good as showing up at Ilex Mill, but certainly this has really been something that I'm very happy we've carried on.
Yay. So in March, since it will be St. Patrick's Day, we expect that everyone will be wearing their
Green.
leprechaun hats, shamrocks, whatever. So we'll look forward to seeing what you have to bring to the table at that time. And it's also St. Patrick's Day, so that makes it easy to remember. I notice I didn't mention green beer, but if you'd like to bring that, you can do that.
We have to exempt Adrian and Malcolm, you know.
They get to go wild.
No,